final whistle. It's all over. Washington City referee calls an end to it. And England, the world champions, are out of the 1970 World Cup.
I don't believe it. We're the reigning world champions and we've just been knocked out in the quarterfinals by Germany in extra time after being 2-0 up. This is the most humiliating moment any England fan has ever had to endure. Well, at least we won the World Cup 4 years ago, and at least it's never, ever going to get more embarrassing than this. Right? England exit World Cup 2022 in the quarter-final stage at the hands of France. And unlike many previous England exits, there will be no paradigm shift and there is no real widespread fallout. In both good and bad ways, World Cup 2022 has come and gone for England with a few nice memories, but ultimately nothing really learnt. England won, France 2. Everyone seems to know the score. Following England's unpredicted and relative success at World Cup 2018, Southgate's 6-year tenure has seen the England fan base slowly split into effectively one of two categories. Either A, Southgate has modernised the England team, taking them from an embarrassing mess to genuine contenders for the first time in decades. Or B, Southgate has ridden his luck throughout the last 6 years and comes undone at the first sign of any decent opposition, whatever that may mean. Southgate in or Southgate out. In many ways, World Cup 2022 felt like a chance for both sides to finally put a nail in the coffin to the argument, to finally have a right and a wrong, and to ultimately determine just who has ended up on the right side of English footballing history. An opportunity for Team Southgate out to bask in the knowledge that they were right all along and they weren't fooled by England's early tournament results. Or a chance for Team Southgate in to gloat in the justification of their backing of Southgate and his team through the good times and the bad. But when the final whistle blew in Qatar, much like England, neither side really would have their day in the sun. Southgate's side showed heart, character and just enough tactical nuance to provide a performance that, on another day, may have resulted in knocking out the world champions. However, England still ultimately failed to do that. Playing well but losing to the world champions neither confirms you're a fraud with a knack of chancing your way through tournaments, but also neither assures you're a born winner who's improved the side enough to now go and beat the world's best. It leaves England in a somewhat awkward place. The result was never truly bad enough to immediately warrant Southgate getting the sack, but not good enough to actually progress through the tournament, bring home the World Cup, and let us all finally dance in the streets. Gareth Southgate, of course, is not the first England manager to not win a major tournament, but I wonder just how much that being one of the closest to do so works for his credibility in both good and bad ways. Gareth Southgate has the highest win percentage of any England manager to manage over 50 games. Southgate's 4th place finish with England at World Cup 2018 is England's joint best finish since 1990, and 2nd at Euro 2020 is England's best finish at a European Championship ever. 3 tournaments under Southgate so far has resulted in 6 knockout round victories, which is the same amount as every single one of his predecessors combined since 1968. England's win against Germany in the round of 16 at Euro 2020 was England's first knockout victory at a European Championship ever. Off the pitch, even if it does seem to now be wobbling slightly, The national team's relationship and interest from the public is at the highest it's been since possibly Euro 96. And inside the dressing room, the players absolutely love him. What cannot be denied, even by the Southgate OUT brigade, is Southgate's skill in keeping a dressing room together and unified. And I say skill because that's truly what it is. Yes, look, managing a football team is all about squad selection, opposition scouting, tactical knowledge, and all the rest of it. But none of it is worth anything if you can't keep a select group of 26 players happy for 6 weeks of intensive football at the end of a long season. Declan Rice's comments practically begging him to stay after the final whistle following England's defeat to France is telling evidence of the effective man management Southgate brings to England. Southgate also has a knack of keeping his head down and staying out of the headlines. While his squeaky clean, teacher's pet, local church vicar-esque image might be labelled as some as him being nothing more than a corporate yes man to his Football Association superiors, it does mean England have managed to enjoy an extensive period of peace off the field, free from any bust-ups, embarrassing newspaper headlines and sudden dramatic departures. Your initial reaction may be to feel that not being a problematic human being while you're being paid to be in one of the most lucrative jobs in international football is a seriously low bar to achieve, but it really hasn't always been this way. We only have to look back to his predecessor in Sam Allardyce, who was sacked in a sting operation by reporters at the Daily Telegraph after being filmed advertising the undercover reporters on how to circumvent FA rules and negotiating a deal worth £400,000. Fabio Capello, England manager between 2007 and 2012, resigned from the job after a bust-up with the FA regarding their decision to strip John Terry as England captain. A decision made in February 2012 as John Terry was under investigation for racially abusing Anton Ferdinand, brother of fellow England centre-back Rio. Confusingly, Capello had already stripped John Terry of the captaincy himself once before, in 2010, after Terry's involvement in a tabloid scandal allegedly involving him sleeping with England squad member Wayne Bridges' wife, before Capello then reinstated him as captain. Glenn Hoddle, England manager between 1996 and 1999, was unceremoniously sacked from the position after an interview with the Times newspaper where he expressed views that disabled people were being punished for sins in a former life. Do you see what I mean? Didier Deschamps was in charge of the French national team for 6 years before winning the World Cup in 2018. And Joachim Löw was in charge of Germany for 8 years before winning the World Cup in 2014. To win a major tournament, you actually need a manager to, be in charge for a decent length of time without being suddenly removed from the position for embarrassing reasons. If nothing else, it's hard to argue against the notion that Gareth Southgate has brought stability to the national team for the first time in literal decades. And I think stability is an important word because it comes across in the football that the Three Lions now play. There has been a major push from the English FA over the last 10 years to install a new way of developing talent and a new philosophy of playing style for the national team, which was based almost entirely around, ironically, the French national team. In 1988, France opened its doors to a new, state-of-the-art central training hub known as Clairefontaine, with the aim of changing the way France produces and trains its massive pool of potential talent. A decade on, and France would lift their first World Cup in 1998, and a decade on from then, they'd lift their second. The new methodology of nurturing French talent involves a focus on improving technique and improving decision-making with the aim of raising the intelligence level of the youth, ready for the national team when their time may come. Clairefontaine also extends its influence to playing style. All age groups are trained in a 4-3-3 formation, with the French Association believing that a 4-3-3 offers the largest potential to train the players with a large amount of tactical flexibility, ready for whatever formation the national team may play come the real thing. The influence France football has had on England is obvious. In 2012, England themselves opened St George's Park, a new state-of-the-art football hub to instill specific skills, attributes and ideologies into the English youth talent pool to turn them into elite players ready for the national side. In December 2014, then England under-21s manager Gareth Southgate and FA Director of Elite Development Dan Ashworth introduced England DNA, a framework for all England youth teams from the under-15s to the under-21s, designed to change the way England plays and produces players, with the aim to create elite-level English players ready for the senior national team come the real thing. Sound familiar? Since its introduction, St George's Park and England DNA, while still failing to ultimately bring football home, has to be seen as an unmitigated success. In 2017, the England under-17s won the Under-17 World Cup, England under-19s won the Under-19s European Championship, and the England under-20s won the Under-20 World Cup. Looking more recently than 2017, the past summer, England under-19s won the 2022 Under-19s European Championship once again, with a squad featuring the likes of Doyle, Chukwuemeka, Bioyne Gittins, Delap and Scarlett, who are all on the books of major clubs in the Premier League, Serie A and the Bundesliga. But not only has French development been studied and, well, let's admit it, copied, the way France have navigated themselves through tournaments under the helm of Deschamps has had a massive influence too. Even with a World Cup win under his belt in 2018, Didier Deschamps' ball is still derided by some as being negative, defensive and a terrorist if you're going to use the official Twitter terminology. Although back-to-back World Cup finals will now surely end that debate, before the start of Qatar 2022, there was a not insignificant section of France football supporters fed up with Deschamps' defensive, safety-first football. Or we're France, look at our squad, we have the best squad in the world, and we play football like this? Any competent manager would have us playing attractive, offensive football. We won the World Cup in 2018 in spite of him, not because of him. Again, does that sound familiar? Southgate has moulded the national team under similar ideologies. Cautious football with an emphasis on possession and minimising mistakes, giving England's top attacking talent a steady foundation to go and score goals and win games in individual moments. Modern England slowly and purposefully build the ball up, aiming to stifle opponents' attacking threat by virtue of simply not allowing them to have the ball. England take few risks and minimise the chance of counterattacks. Team Southgate out will argue this is boring and negative and a waste of the talent that's in the squad. They want to see an attacking England, a free-flowing England, a swashbuckling, balls to the wall England that throws their entire glut of attacking talent onto the field and allows them to play with freedom and flair. Southgate's experiments with a 5-at-the-back formation, often with two players capable of ball winning and box-to-box play screening in front of them, also adds fuel to the fire that Southgate is reluctant and is scared to take the handbrake off. But as Southgate has argued himself, often this style of playing is how teams win major tournaments. The Spain team to win the World Cup in 2010 is now seen as a technical, brilliant side with legendary players who, importantly, played beautiful and exciting football. But in reality, Spain in 2010 were one of the most boring sides I've ever watched. Over the course of 7 World Cup games, Spain scored 8 goals on their way to the title. Portugal won Euro 2016 by only winning 1 game in regulation time. France navigated their way through the World Cup 2018 group stage with a narrow victory over Australia thanks to a late own goal, a 1-0 win over Peru and a 0-0 against Denmark. Much like that Spain 2010 side, the France team to win the 2018 World Cup is often looked back on now as an exciting team of icons who dominated their way through the tournament, but that just really wasn't the case. Deschamps set up France to play a rigid 4-4-2 for the knockout games and played defensive midfielder Matuidi as a defensive-minded left winger. It's not even like they lacked options. Deschamps played him while the likes of Thomas Lemar, Nabil Fekir and Ousmane Dembele sat on the bench. Can you imagine Southgate deploying, Calvin Phillips on the left wing over some of the English attacking talents? I think the entire country would experience a collective aneurysm on the release of the team sheet. And look, this is not to say that Spain or Portugal or France were undeserving winners and weren't excellent teams, because they absolutely were. But they were excellent in a cautious and defensively effective way. Actually, I'm not sure Portugal were deserving winners in 2016. They rode their luck at that. They got a bit lucky there. The big takeaway Southgate took from all of this is that teams that go far in tournaments focus on not conceding. Spain might have only scored 8 goals in 2010, but they also only conceded 2. Portugal in 2016 conceded 5 over the course of 7 games, and France in 2018 conceded only 6. And arguably, 2 of those were consolation goals against Argentina and Croatia, when those games were already wrapped up as French wins. England have attempted to follow this blueprint, conceding just 2 goals at Euro 2020 and 4 goals at World Cup 2022, 2 of those ultimately being consolation goals, with the result already wrapped up against Iran. You know, sometimes I'm just not entirely sure what people are expecting from the national side. There seems to be a notion that England can just flood the pitch with all their attackers and suddenly the team will be a free-flowing, scoring, unstoppable machine. Maybe this is just some hangover from English club football, where the Premier League boasts quite easily the best collection of coaching and playing talent in the world, leading to tactically intricate, aesthetically pleasing matches full of exciting attacking football. But international football is a different beast. Time and time again, I've seen the argument made that people would rather watch an attacking England give it a go and lose over a defensive England that sees through a boring game and wins. But it's just nonsense, and everyone knows it. Go tell the Germans that they should be happy that they are an exciting attacking side after they conceded 2 counter-attack goals against Japan to see them effectively knocked out in the group stage in Qatar. The Brazilians went into Qatar playing Lucas Paquetá and Neymar in central midfield. They took the lead against Croatia in extra time and pushed further for another brave, exciting, handbrake-off football. If only Southgate had the balls to play like Brazil did. Anyway, with 3 minutes to go, Brazil lost it in midfield, Croatia counter-attacked down the other end, their first shot on target beats Alisson, and a penalty shootout later, Brazil, the overwhelming favourites, were on the plane home. Look, I just don't think this is as simple as people make it out to be. The more forwards you have on the pitch doesn't necessarily correlate with a higher chance of scoring. Teams need a defensive foundation to build from. Teams need a core group of players that balance each other out and fulfill different roles in all facets of the game. Look, I shouldn't have to explain this, but it seems that everyone wants England to play a front four of Kane, Maddison, Rashford and Saka, with Grealish and Foden in central midfield. Good luck to Declan Rice, who would be the only player in that whole front 6 who can actually win the ball. Throw in Trent Alexander-Arnold at right back as well. We're England, of course. We should be dominating all teams all the time. Every game should be a 6-0 win. It's ludicrous. And again, I'm not sure where this sentiment really comes from. Football fans that watch their clubs every week wouldn't expect this at club level. So why does the mentality change so much when watching the national side? England beat Wales 3-0, and I still saw complaints on Twitter from England fans about it being boring. Now, look, I'm sure this isn't something exclusive to England and the national side. From what I can glean from letting Google translate some replies to tweets from other national teams, I can see that every national team fan base is a bit like this. But the level of hysteria around the England team when they don't win a game is outstanding. England are either the greatest team in the entire world or the absolute worst. A huge amount of the English public fail to see an in-between. It's harder to defend Southgate's boring England when they play out results like England 0, USA 0, but games like this happen in football. England didn't even lose the game. They played out a cautious affair that saw them qualify for the knockout stages. It wasn't very good, it wasn't very exciting, but they got the job done. And yet, after the game, there was a prominent sense from the fan base that England were finished. An awful side with an awful manager that would definitely be losing to Wales in the next game. England 0, USA 0. Guess the World Cup's over then. It is maddening to watch. Here's a tweet from a name that isn't worth mentioning with almost 13,000 likes, calling for a mid-tournament sacking because England drew a football match that saw us qualify for the knockout rounds. We're England. We're the best and most greatest footballing nation in the entire world. If you fail to win a game, the team is a disgrace and the manager should be sacked on the spot. Even if you do win, if it's not done in an entertaining, free-flowing, high-scoring way, then we still won't be happy. We're England. Why are we not 6-0 up at half-time? When you look back at England's last 3 tournaments with Southgate at the helm, we can see his methodology. England under Southgate are a side that progress through tournaments and win games against so-called inferior opposition. Look, I know, we're England, it's our divine right to beat inferior opposition, but just hear me out here. Under Roy Hodgson at Euro 2016, England failed to beat the likes of Slovakia and Russia, failing to top the group to Wales. Not only were the results bad, but the connotations of finishing second were disastrous too. A second place finish now ensuring England ended up on the side of the bracket with France, Germany, Italy and Spain all as potential opponents. Of course, none of that mattered anyway, as England crashed out in the round of 16 after an embarrassing loss against Iceland in one of the worst results in English footballing history. England under Hodgson didn't fare much better in the 2014 World Cup either. England found themselves with a tough group featuring Uruguay, Italy and Costa Rica alongside them. England finished bottom with just a single point on the board. A tough group, yeah, but Costa Rica still topped it with 7 points. A win against Costa Rica and a point elsewhere against Italy or Uruguay probably would have been enough. Euro 2012 saw England progress through the group stage as winners, where they would meet Italy in the quarter-finals. England, ranked 6th in the world at the time, were outplayed in every aspect by an Italian side officially ranked 12th, and England were defeated on penalties. World Cup 2010 saw England fail to top their group over the United States, drawing with them and also failing to beat Algeria. Finishing second in the group led them to an early run-in with Germany in the round of 16. Lampard's goal officially didn't cross the line, and England were dumped out at the hands of a 4-1 defeat to one of their biggest rivals on the international stage. I could go on here. England didn't even fucking qualify for Euro 2008, finishing outside of the top 2 in their qualifying group to Croatia and fucking Russia. England drew 0-0 with Israel, lost to Russia, and drew 0-0 at home to Macedonia in that qualifying campaign. With our mini history lesson completed, I can finally get to the point. Yes, England often get knocked out of tournaments early due to being defeated by a major footballing nation. But if we look back over the last 20 years, often them running into a major footballing nation was entirely because of England's failure to win the games that they should win. If you beat Macedonia at home, England make it to Euro 2008. If you beat United States and Algeria, England don't run into Germany that early on in 2010. Beat an Italian side ranked 6 places below you, and England reach the semi-final in 2012. Beat Costa Rica and don't lose to Uruguay, and England will get through the group stage in 2014. Get a result against Slovakia, and England top the group in 2016. England failed to do any of these. Which is why I think it's increasingly important that we don't take for granted that Southgate has created a modern England side that win games that they are heavily favourites to win. England haven't been able to do that for at least a decade. We can see other nations wind up in a mess when they fail to win games that they should too. Germany played great against Spain to get a 1-1 draw in the World Cup, but they lost their opening game to Japan, and qualification was therefore no longer in their hands. Spain played excellent football this year, but failed to beat Morocco. Portugal and Brazil smashed Switzerland and South Korea respectively with free-flowing, attacking, exciting displays of football. But then both of them got dumped out to Croatia and to Morocco. Do you see what I'm getting at here? Before we can even have the discussion regarding whether or not England are good enough to win the World Cup, whether Gareth Southgate is the right man when it comes to winning the big tournament games, well, the first step is, actually getting there. What's the point in being a team that can get a good result against Spain or score some brilliant goals against South Korea if you're getting knocked out of the tournament early doors anyway? And this is part of the reason why I think Southgate has so much credit in the bank. Again, detractors will argue that this is what is to be expected of England, and he doesn't get brownie points for results like these. But how can this be the expectation when it hasn't been like this for so long? England finished second in their group in 2018, behind Belgium, who were one of the best teams in the world at that time. England beat Tunisia and dispatched Panama and got the job done. They got past Colombia and then they handedly beat Sweden. England opened Euro 2020 by beating World Cup finalist Croatia, avoiding defeat in a tricky fixture against Scotland and then beating Czech Republic. England then beat Germany, Ukraine and Denmark on the road to the final. World Cup 2022 saw England once again open the tournament with an excellent win over Iran, avoiding defeat in a tricky fixture against the USA and then smashing Wales. England then dispatched Senegal en route to their knockout defeat to World Cup holders France. It's only Iran, or it's only Wales, or it's only Senegal, you might say if you're Scottish or Welsh or Irish or Australian or Indian or German or from any country in the EU, really. Who does like us? Who even Malta? Did Malta? Maybe you wouldn't say it if you're from Malta. Kosovo? I think Kosovo like us. Maybe you wouldn't say it if you're from Kosovo. It's only Iran, you might say. Well, okay, but it was only Slovakia. It was only Russia. It was only Costa Rica. It was only Algeria. And it was only fucking Iceland as well. And we've seen what England have been like in those fixtures in the past. I just have to assume that the only people who proclaimed it's only Iran after England's opening win have just never seen England's opening game of a tournament at any point in the last 20 years. I feel this whole narrative is actually a little disingenuous to some of the teams England have beaten. Senegal are literally the African champions. Okay, I know that not having Sadio Mane was a big loss for them, but are we really trying to suggest that Senegal are absolutely nothing without him? At Euro 2020, Croatia were World Cup finalists who had already beaten England in a major tournament a couple of years earlier. England beat them 1-0 in the group, and now it's suddenly only Croatia. At the same tournament, England knocked out a German side that had just beaten Portugal and had only narrowly lost to France. But of course, when the final whistle blows, there seems to be sometimes a weird narrative change. England have beaten Germany, but now it's this Germany. Of course, England were expected to beat this German side. But when the fuck are England ever expected to beat the Germans? It's Germany. English footballers are born with a destiny to lose to Germany woven into their very DNA. Just how much talk was there about Iran, USA and Wales being a tough group for England for a multitude of reasons? Rivalries, politics, playstyles. Before the tournament, you couldn't scroll for 5 seconds on Twitter without someone mentioning these games as being potential banana skins for England. Here's a bunch of Reddit comments predicting an early England exit. Here's JJ Bull from Tifo Football predicting England to draw all 3 games and crash out in the group stage.
Them to do well,
subtle behaviour
until certain things happen.
Yeah.
So they're going to draw with Wales, then Iran are going to be really hard to break down, and England aren't good at beating those teams. They aren't. They low-scoring games. They score from set pieces. They score from set pieces.
When are you remembering?
That's what's going to happen, and they're going to draw with Iran. And then the United States are going to be really up for it as well, and they'll get a little surprise. And
do you think the teams at the World Cup will be up for it? Is that what you're saying? That's your professional analysis. The teams that go to the World Cup will be up for it.
I think England don't play well against teams who sit back in a block and stop them from playing. I think Wales will be pumped, and that makes a real difference.
Wales have quite a good opportunity there, don't they? I mean,
3 points, and then they're out.
But then, when Southgate actually does the job and England sails through the group, it's as if none of this was ever said. Suddenly it's just Iran, and everyone suffers a terrible case of selective amnesia. Tournament football doesn't work the way you think it does. Winning a European Championship or a World Cup is never, ever a grueling gauntlet where a team has to defeat 7 of the top 10 nations in the competition to come away with the prize. Most tournaments see a major nation progress, and note I didn't say win, past maybe 1 or 2 other major nations to win it all. Let's look at the World Cup just gone. Argentina have won the 2022 World Cup. Who did they beat? Mexico, Poland, Australia and Croatia. And that's it. The 2 best footballing nations they played were the Netherlands and France, and they failed to beat both of them, drawing both games in regulation time and relying on penalties. Now, look, okay, before anyone gets angry at me, I'm not saying they weren't deserving winners. We all love Messi and all the rest of it. In fact, I'm saying the exact opposite. Think about it. Argentina are world champions without beating a single big team in the entire tournament. But you know why they still deserve the trophy? Because they actually won the games they should win. After their initial loss to Saudi Arabia, Argentina were favourites to beat Poland, Mexico, Croatia and Australia, and they did the job and they beat them. They avoided defeat to the 2 big boys in the Netherlands and France, and with a little bit of penalty luck, they are now world champions, because that's how these things work. Do you know who failed to win the games that they were favourites to win? Belgium, Denmark, Germany, Spain, Portugal, and the favourites Brazil. Out of the top 11 ranked teams in the world before the start of the tournament, 6 of them were knocked out by teams ranked lower than them. If we include Italy, who are ranked 6th in the world, who failed to even qualify, that makes it 7 out of 11 teams who failed to win the World Cup because they didn't win games that they really should have done. I mean, what are people expecting here? There will never ever be a scenario where England are tasked with beating Spain, Brazil, France, Italy and Argentina all in a row to win a World Cup. It doesn't work like that. Winning the games that you are favourites to win is mostly how you win major tournaments. All of this also circles into the lucky draw argument I've often seen made about Southgate and his England side. England and Southgate detractors will argue that the only reason England have made it as far as they have in recent tournaments is because of lucky draws, matching them against rubbish teams and in easy groups. Not only do I feel that, once again, that does quite a disservice to the teams England actually have played against over the last 6 years, and also, as I've tried to show, there are no real easy games in major international tournaments. It also majorly overlooks the fact that England have often earned their right to play weaker sides by topping the group. At Euro 2020, England finished top of their group. This put England into the side of the bracket where they would have to face a selection of Sweden, Ukraine, Germany, Netherlands, Wales and Denmark on the route to the final. Southgate, he's done it again with his easy draws, right? But if we look closer, we can see a potentially different outcome. England played Germany in the round of 16. If England had finished second in their group, they would have potentially had to play Spain. England played Ukraine in the quarterfinals. Why? Because Spain finished second in their group to Sweden and ended up on the other side of the bracket. If Spain had just won the games they were supposed to win and actually topped their group, they would have played Ukraine and then England in the quarterfinals. England potentially could have faced the Netherlands in the semi-finals if the Netherlands didn't crash out to Czech Republic in the round of 16. It's only Czech Republic, right? Meanwhile, England topping the group meant that they avoided potentially early clashes with Spain, Belgium, Portugal, France and Italy. So is it a lucky draw? Or is this just rewards for finishing top of the group where others who were expected to do so didn't? Like, this is literally how seeding works. Tournaments are designed this way. Group winners are rewarded with games against group runners-up. That's the whole incentive of winning your group. Pop quiz. Which group in World Cup 2022 had the highest average FIFA ranking of any group? England's group of Group B. Technically, that was the group of death in the tournament. You may say that that title should be awarded to Group E, which featured both Spain and Germany, but that group also contained Japan and Costa Rica. If Spain and Germany had both secured wins against Japan and Costa Rica, they'd both have gone through. Of course, neither could. Germany crashed out, and Spain couldn't even finish first. Come on, say it with me. It's only Japan. At the 2018 World Cup, England finished second in their group and played Colombia in the round of 16. It instead could have been a Sadio Mane-led Senegal or a Lewandowski-led Poland, but you guessed it, both of those teams failed to win the group over Colombia. England played Sweden in the quarter-finals when it could have been Germany, but again, Germany finished bottom of Group F. England played Croatia in the semi-finals when it could have been Argentina, but it wasn't, as they finished second in Group D, and it could have been Spain, but it also wasn't Spain because Spain couldn't beat Russia in the round of 16 and went home after losing on penalties. Do you see what I mean? If you were to pull out a wall chart before all of these tournaments and then predict all the results of all the teams, you probably would have had England running into the likes of Argentina, Spain, Germany, the Netherlands, and all the rest of them. But it often didn't happen because those teams failed to do what England did, and that's win group stages and win games they were clear favourites to win. For all the talk about Southgate and his lucky draws, do you know who actually kind of did get a lucky draw this year? Say it quietly, but probably Argentina. Saudi Arabia, Poland and Mexico is an extremely favourable draw, and out of all the major footballing nations one might face on the road to the World Cup final, Netherlands are arguably the most favourable too. But that's football. The draw is the draw, and you can only play what's in front of you. Argentina topped their group and were rewarded for it, and it's not like they have any say in who they play anyway. Yes, draws will always play some factor in a team's chances of winning a major tournament. Belgium in 2018 springs to mind, who could rightly feel unlucky as they topped their group, but it still left them with Brazil in the quarterfinals and France in the semis. But I just feel like all of this talk of lucky draws is kind of overblown and doesn't really get labelled against any other team apart from Southgate's England. And hey, even if that doesn't convince you, let's take a look at some of the lucky draws England have had in the past, shall we? England were fortunate to draw Iceland in the round of 16 at Euro 2016 and lost. In 2010, England were fortunate to be drawn into a very winnable group with the USA and Algeria and Slovenia. If they had topped it, they would have run into potential opponents Ghana, Uruguay and the Netherlands on the route to the final, but they finished second and ended up on the other side of the bracket and getting dumped out by Germany. Time and time again, we see teams in tournaments have potentially very easy runs to the latter stages of the competition, only for them to then go and royally mess it up. A favourable draw doesn't guarantee anything. A common pushback for all of this is that no England manager has had the squad as good as the one Southgate has. But is this true? And really, does it even matter? I'm not going to sit here and proclaim that every England squad over the past 56 years has been capable of winning a major trophy, because they weren't. The pool of talent available for the squad has ebbed and flowed in quality, as you'd expect with any national side. But in 2008, Steve McClaren's England featured the likes of Neville, Carragher, Terry, Gerrard, Lampard, Carrick, Rooney, Crouch and Defoe, and they still couldn't qualify for Euro 2008. Even if you think the England squad is better now than it was in 2008, are you going to tell me that that squad couldn't do better than a 0-0 at home to Macedonia? In 2010, Capello had Ashley Cole, John Terry, Lampard, Gerrard, Joe Cole, Wayne Rooney, Carrick, Gareth Barry, Jermaine Defoe. Look, whether or not you think this is good enough to be world beaters is irrelevant. You cannot be suggesting that this squad didn't have enough to at least beat the USA or Algeria, can you? Euro 2016 saw Roy Hodgson name the likes of Kyle Walker, James Milner, Raheem Sterling, Harry Kane, Wayne Rooney, Jamie Vardy, Jordan Henderson, Daniel Sturridge, John Stones, Jack Wilshere, Dele Alli and Marcus Rashford all in his squad. Was that squad good enough to win the whole thing? Well, who cares? Because you're asking the wrong question. Was that squad good enough to beat Iceland? How many of the Iceland squad will get into the 2016 England squad? How many Iceland players from 2016 can you even name? Maybe at points in time, past England managers have had better squads. Maybe at other points, they've had worse ones. What must be said is that regardless of the quality in the squads, Southgate's recent predecessors have all underachieved with them. Which leads me neatly on to discuss the conundrum. Just how good is this modern England squad? England had the 8th youngest squad at World Cup 2022 with an average age of 26.4, which was younger than the likes of France, Germany, the Netherlands, Argentina and Brazil. England boasted 11 players under the age of 26 years old, with 6 of them being under the age of 24. England's quality in the wide areas is their greatest strength, with the likes of Foden, Grealish, Sterling, Saka, Rashford and even potentially a James Maddison battling it out for 2 starting spots. England's quality at fullback, especially at right back, is also well known, with Walker, Trippier, Trent, Shaw and White all excellent options. And this list doesn't even include the likes of Reece James or Ben Chilwell, injured on this occasion. England's abundance of wide players, paired with elite striker Harry Kane, gives an immediate exciting feeling of tournament favourites. But looking a little deeper, some cracks start to emerge here. Firstly, just where's the midfield? Declan Rice is an excellent player, but is also 23 years old and has never tasted elite European competition at club level. Bellingham, a bona fide wonder boy and already brilliant in his own right, is still only 19. Calvin Phillips made his move to Manchester City in the summer and featured for just 1 single minute of Premier League action before the World Cup. Henderson is the most experienced midfielder in the squad, but is also the joint oldest at 32 years old. Henderson aside, these young midfielders will progress and will probably be mainstays for England for years to come. But even still, I think there are some real gaps in terms of profiles here. Just where is England's passing deep-lying midfielder? In the mould of a Verratti or a Frankie de Jong or a Busquets. Declan Rice is an excellent second phase passer and ball winner, and Bellingham is a tantalising prospect who can roam up and down the pitch, causing any team issues. But neither are pure distributors, able to pick the ball up from the defence and spray it around. This is probably why Southgate stuck with centre-back pairing of Maguire and John Stones, as the burden of ball progression in the first third of the pitch is placed almost entirely on them. In reality, regardless of Maguire's drop-off in form and minutes at club level, it was always going to be these two. I think a lot of people see international squad selection in the same way they'd set up their club for a 38-game season on Football Manager. To win a tournament, England need to not lose a maximum of 7 games. 7. There was so much discussion regarding Tomori's omission of the squad before the tournament, especially contrasted with Cody's inclusion, but it's just 7 games. It really doesn't matter who England's 4th choice centre-back is, because they're not going to play anyway. May as well take someone like Cody, who is a familiar and reportedly well-liked presence in the dressing room. You're going to start Maguire and Stones regardless, because they are part of a core set of England players who have had Southgate's tactics and ideals worked into them for the past 6 years. Up front is Harry Kane, arguably England's only true world-class player. Overall, the England squad is full of excellent players and potentially world-beating elite footballers, but I'm not quite sure it's a totally balanced one. Having a gluttony of fullbacks and attacking wingers is fantastic if you need cover and depth over a 38-game club season, but over the course of the tournament, many of these players are all competing with each other for 2 or 3 starting spots, with many other roles in the team left without cover or truly elite options in the first place. Out of the 26 English players that were available for selection for the game against France, only 3 have Champions League winners' medals. France had 6. And this doesn't even include injured Lucas Hernandez, who would have made it 7, or injured Ballon d'Or winner Karim Benzema, who has 5 medals just to himself. We've just seen one of the greatest World Cup finals in living memory, as Lionel Messi and Kylian Mbappe went back and forth, each trying to one-up each other in their brilliance. Where is England's Messi? Where is England's Mbappe? Look, I love Harry Kane, and I think he's actually still a bit underrated, if anything, but I'm not sure his profile is capable of carrying the entire team to victories like Messi and Mbappe are. England spent so much time and energy executing a plan to try and stop Mbappe because he's that good. You absolutely have to. Who in the England side would the French camp pay that much attention to? Maybe in the future it'll be Saka. Maybe in the future it'll be Foden. But they're not there yet. Considering France have reached the final 3 times out of their past 4 tournaments, a player in an England shirt who can match Mbappe's output might honestly be vital, as crazy and as unrealistic as that might be to say. Southgate's England, through the mentality, philosophy and playing style he has installed over the last 6 years, have turned into early tournament machines. England win the games they should win and consistently progress into the latter stages of tournaments. Although still regarded as unimpressive to some, when you consider expectation, pressure and the weight of historical results before him, in my mind, this has to be commended. This is a confident England. This is an England that dominates when they should. This is an England free of embarrassing slip-ups. This is an England team that top group stages and give themselves a chance at going far. Whether you're impressed or not, this is a revolution in my mind, because it's never been this way. However, I said before that no team will need to beat 5 or 6 other major sides to win a major tournament, but you'll probably need to beat at least one. When England face the best of the best, they have historically always failed to progress. England lost on penalties to eventual finalists Portugal at Euro 2004. England again lost on penalties to Portugal in the quarter-finals of World Cup 2006. England lost to eventual semi-finalists Germany in 2010. England lost on penalties to Italy in 2012. England failed to beat either Italy or Uruguay in the group stage of 2014. And while Gareth Southgate has done good work in his attempts to revolutionise England, this is one bad habit that he hasn't been able to shake. Southgate's management of England in the big games, the ones against the major nations and the ones with the finest margins of error, have been the biggest stick used to beat him with, and this is, unfortunately, much harder to defend. England lost to Croatia at World Cup 2018, failed to beat Italy in the final of Euro 2020, and lost to France at World Cup 2022. As mentioned right at the start of this video, the sentiment that England go out as soon as they face a decent team was already at the forefront of every discussion surrounding Southgate's management of the national team, and World Cup 2022 unfortunately has not changed this. Despite leading very early on in both 2018 and 2020, England were outplayed in practically every regard by Croatia and Italy as they slowly and heartbreakingly succumbed to defeats in both matches. In both 2018 and 2020, England were outpossessed, outshot and outpassed over the course of 120 minutes. If Southgate's ability to set up a team tactically to start a game is one of his greatest strengths, then his inability to then decipher problems and find solutions during a game must be his greatest weakness. England, despite starting extremely well during their potentially biggest fixtures for 56 years, struggled to adapt to the changing climate of both games. What I will say is that I don't think that going on to win both of these games is as simple as the comment section of every form of social media makes it out to be. The overwhelming majority of people seem to think that England sitting back, conceding possession and trying to defend a 1-0 win was the game plan all along. If only Southgate wasn't so negative and allowed England to keep pushing, we could have won 4 or 5-0. As already mentioned with the case of Brazil at the World Cup this year, there's no guarantee that releasing the handbrake when you're winning won't provide anything but excellent counter-attacking opportunities for the opposition. But regardless, I'm absolutely sure that sitting deep and not attacking was never the plan anyway. In the case of 2018 especially, let's not forget that England pushed for more goals throughout that first half. This image of Kane not squaring to Sterling in the first half at 1-0 up is by now burned into the minds of every living England fan, and if his 2 attempts at the shot go in, England kill the game and see the final. In the semi-final of World Cup 2018 and the final of Euro 2020, I don't believe it was England's intention to not create more goal-scoring opportunities, but you can't create more goal-scoring opportunities when you don't have the ball. England's entire game plan over the last few years, harking all the way back to England DNA, is to win games by controlling the lion's share of possession. In 2018, every single game England had the majority of possession in, they won. The 2 games where they didn't have the majority of possession, they lost, against Belgium in the groups and Croatia in the semi-final. At Euro 2020, England once again won the possession stat in each of the games that they won. The one game they didn't was the final against Italy. This was a particularly haunting display of not being able to get the ball, as England could only muster 34% of possession on that day. There's so much talk regarding team selection of these games, especially, who plays in the forward line. For World Cup 2018, it was the lack of Rashford until late on, and in Euro 2020, it was the lack of fan favourite Jack Grealish, whose stock was so high at that time that the stadium would erupt on mere sight of him emerging from the bench. But looking back, I just think everyone's missing the point. Changing your forward line doesn't matter if you can't get the ball to them. It wasn't like Sterling was missing open goals all game and England needed someone on to finish all the chances that were being created. England could not only get the ball forward, they simply couldn't get the ball, period. I'm not sure that switching wingers would have changed that much, because both of these games were lost in midfield. And to be fair to Southgate, this was always going to be the area of the pitch that England would find hardest to compete. Croatia in 2018, sporting a midfield 3 of Modric, Brozovic and Rakitic, was arguably the best midfield 3 in the entire tournament. Let's not forget, in 2018, players like Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham hadn't emerged yet. It was Modric and Brozovic and Rakitic up against an England 3 of Dele Alli, Henderson and Jesse Lingard. There was only going to be one winner in midfield. For Euro 2020, I think it's a similar story. Nicolo Barella, Marco Verratti and Jorginho were the best midfield in the entire tournament. Experienced, capable, elite midfielders, all possessing world-class passing ranges and the ability to receive the ball from the backline and distribute. England went with a back 5 for this game, featuring a midfield 2 of Rice and Phillips, who were both playing for mid-table Premier League sides, and neither of them had even a single minute of Champions League football between them. They were completely overrun by the Italian 3. England didn't have the midfield to compete with the best in 2018, and in 2020 they didn't even try to, focusing the build-up down the flanks with Shaw and Trippier as wing-backs. But having said all of that, these were still ultimately mismanaged games. Against Croatia in 2018, due to the narrowness of England's midfield three, Croatia fullbacks Veselko and Strinic had the run of the flanks, with English fullbacks Ashley Young and Kieran Trippier pinned back due to the presence of Rebic and Perisic. Perisic's equaliser itself comes from Veselko having acres of space and about 10 years of time to pick his head up and cross into the box. England could have potentially switched to a 4-3-3, pushed Sterling or Rashford out wide, and given the Croatia fullbacks a dilemma about going forward and leaving England's two fastest players with space to run in behind. It didn't happen. England made mostly like-for-like changes in extra time to switch out tired legs, and England wilted under the pressure. Look, I know it's very easy for me to say all this in hindsight, casually watching back the game 4 years later in the comfort of my own home, but these are the sorts of decisions that separate the best from the best. These are the sorts of decisions that make the difference between winning and losing. For Euro 2020, after England went 1-0 up and then failed to do much of anything else in the first half, surely there must have been a shout here to switch to a 4-3-3 and introduce another body in between Rice and Phillips to help them compete against the best midfield in the tournament. Southgate stuck with the back five and England couldn't get the ball. There's more than one way to win a football match, but over the course of the last 6 years, England and Gareth Southgate haven't found one. We've seen many teams in this World Cup who don't control games but still find a way to win. When England don't control games, they lose. England struggle desperately when they don't have the ball, and in reality, I'm not sure that they should. As previously mentioned, England have a whole treasure chest of central defenders, fullbacks and pacey wingers to choose from. I understand Plan A, controlling games and stifling the opposition, and I fully embrace that that is the most reliable way to win football matches. But the lack of an England Plan B, to sit deep, to block passing lanes, and to counter with some of the best and most decisive wingers in world football, is a failure on Southgate and the way he's managed England. I know it's hard. I know he doesn't have time. International football is a cruel beast, and it's hard enough getting a team to play at an elite level in one style, let alone two. But England remain incredibly tactically inflexible. It's 4-3-3 and controlled suffocation, or nothing really else. Ultimately, I think Southgate knows this, hence his desire to get England familiar with playing with a back five. Since 2018, Southgate has slowly worked this system in over the years, often using it in matches against nations where it's not necessary, as he must have seen them as good opportunities for practice. This of course leads to some monumental head loss from the England fanbase when Southgate's team sheet arrives with confirmation of a back five at home to Albania, but to me, it was always quite clearly a way to get some real game minutes for the squad in how to effectively play with a back five. While there have been some good performances in the system, England have never been able to truly look comfortable in a back five at any point under Southgate's reign. At World Cup 2022, we didn't even see England play in this system even once. The whole thing feels at best like a total waste of time, and at worst, a total failure in how to coach a new system. It's the finest of margins. If Kane scores the chance to go 2-0 up against Croatia, we're not sat here talking about it. If Rashford's penalty is a few inches to the right, England probably go on to win the shootout, and again, we're not sat here talking about it. But we are sat here talking about it. While all the outrage is forever about playing positive, not being scared, and throwing all the attackers onto the field, I think the real discussion here needs to be about the opposite. Anyone who plays football knows that sometimes the game can just get away from you. Players can be nervous, the opposition might do something unexpected, and maybe on that day your team just hasn't woken up. It can happen to any team at any level, but when you find yourself in the mud, it's up to the manager to find themselves a way out in whichever way they can. Unlike many other national teams, big or small, England have not found a way to play badly but still win. Which brings us up to the current day. England 1, France 2. While the outcome is the same as 2018 and 2020, the way England reached it was different. England had more total shots than France, they had more shots on target than France, they won more fouls, they completed more passes, they had more possession, and they won the XG. England also lost the match. Southgate stuck with a 4-3-3 for this game, further evidence that the 5 at the back system has been well and truly ditched. Southgate backed his midfield 3 to control the game, and for the most part, control it they did. Henderson's inclusion in this game before the start of the tournament would have raised eyebrows, but his performance in the previous match against Senegal proved to create a nice balance with Rice and Bellingham alongside him. Southgate stuck with Saka and Foden alongside Kane in an unchanged 11 from England's round of 16 tie. Unlike in 2018 and in 2020, England found themselves 1-0 down early on to an outrageous strike from Tchouaméni. England were in the mud, but on this occasion actually responded well. Kane rolled Upamecano to set up the best chance of the first half, with his attempt to dink the ball over Lloris just clipping the keeper's body and staying out of the net. Between the start of the second half and the 67th minute, England didn't allow France to have a single shot on target from inside their penalty box, while also levelling up the game themselves after Bukayo Saka won a penalty that Kane converted. Harry Maguire's header could only find the woodwork from a set piece, and Luke Shaw's driven ball across to Saka was unfortunately bumbled out by the right side of the post from Theo Hernandez. With the game at a stalemate, France's experience prevailed. Giroud's initial clear sight of goal was well saved by Pickford, but his second clear opportunity following England's inability to get back in position during the second phase of a set piece would be their undoing. Southgate had already lined up changes in Mount and with Sterling before the France goal had even gone in. These players would now be entering the pitch, finding themselves 2-1 down. The Mount for Henderson change was significant. While Mount doesn't offer anywhere near the level of pressing intensity or defensive work that Henderson does, what he does now offer was runs in behind from deep. Deep into the second half, Mount's dash into the penalty area was untracked, leaving Hernandez to panic and needlessly bring him down for England's second penalty kick of the match. If Kane converts here and forces the game into extra time, we'd probably be sat here discussing Southgate's brave and positive change to bring off defensive-minded Henderson for the positive runs of Mason Mount. Instead, Kane blazed over, and England, once again, found themselves dumped out of a major tournament at the hands of a major side. England sort of played well here, and probably should have won. If Tchouaméni's 0.03 XG strike doesn't go in, and Kane's 0.8 XG penalty does, we're not sat here talking about it. But that's football, and yet again, we are. I'm not going to proclaim that England dominated this game and France robbed them of a semi-final. England still struggled to build the ball up through the middle of the park and created relatively little from open play. But unlike in 2018 and in 2020, it was a tight affair, a close game, and for the first time England felt able to impose themselves rather than slowly fall further and further back as the game got away from them. England played relatively well against France, and I'm sorry to do this, but so what? England under Southgate have just found a new way to lose. England weren't outplayed, they weren't embarrassed, and they didn't come completely undone. But they still lost. Before I was saying how when England play badly they lose. Well, even when England play well, they have still found a way to lose. France feel like a team of killers, experienced sharks in the water, ready to pounce at the first sign of blood. England were brave, England rose to the occasion, England played well for large portions of the game, but France simply didn't need to. England needed practically 80 minutes of the best football they've played in years to produce 2 penalties. France needed 2 5-minute spells of good play to convert both of their goals. You'd think by now that through sheer variance alone, England could point to at least one example where they played badly, rode their luck and still somehow came away with a win, but I can't really think of one. France not only did so in this match against England, but arguably did so in their previous round of 16 game against Poland. France ran out eventual 3-1 winners versus Poland, but if it was not for some utterly wasteful Polish finishing in the first half, it might not have been that way. France lost the XG on that day, with Poland creating the better of the high-scoring chances. Mbappe scored 2 goals from 2 chances with a combined XG of 0.11. A reminder that England missed a 0.8 XG chance to see them book their plane home. England were better here, and for that reason the reaction from the France game has been a different one. There is an acceptance that England were a little unlucky, an acceptance that France were the reigning world champions, and an acceptance that on another day it could have gone another way. But as someone who has been watching England for all of his life, you just have to ask the question, when will it? When will it actually go another way? England were as good here as they've been in decades, and England still couldn't win. England have progressed in many ways off the field and also in ways on it, but one could argue, as many England fans currently do, what is the point if it's not bringing home the trophy? England no longer feel like an embarrassment waiting to happen, but England also need more to get over the line. Thinking back to Euro 2016 and the Iceland game, the players on that day looked like scared schoolchildren. The England shirt looked like it weighed 10 tons. They played like they could see every newspaper headline and every destructive news report. Southgate has done excellent work to change this entirely, and it's work that cannot be understated. For years and years and years, not only did England fail, but they failed in the most embarrassing and passive ways. England under Southgate feel free of tabloid scandals, free of changing room bust-ups, and free of performance-weakening instabilities. When you look back on English footballing history, this is no mean feat. And let's face it, Southgate's England also can get good results. They progress through tournaments and they win games of football. Sometimes they win important games of football at a canter, with an air of confidence and with joy. The English national team are no longer a team of losers ready to lose, but neither are the England team a team of winners who always find a way to win. Sometimes it's hard to feel anything but the notion that Southgate has taken England from a team of deserving losers you hate to a team of unlucky losers you quite like. Ultimately though, England still aren't winners either way. I think a lot of the things discussed in this video all come down to a matter of perspective about what England should actually achieve as a footballing nation, and it's something that I go back and forth with on myself. I've spent a lot of time in this video desperately trying to outline and remind you just how bad it really has been since the turn of the century, because on the one hand, surely the past has to factor into our expectations of the future. If you're the England manager, you either win a trophy or you're a failure, which is an incredibly harsh barometer of performance. It kind of reminds me in the way PSG have sacked the likes of Tuchel, Pochettino and Unai Emery in recent years for not winning the Champions League, a tournament that Manchester City under Pep Guardiola is still unable to win. You can be the right person for the job, you can get the team playing brilliant football, and you can still not win a knockout competition for a multitude of reasons. 15 or 20 minutes of bad football and you could be out. A penalty shootout goes your way and you're down on one knee for your knighthood. But on the other hand, it's hard to not look at similar footballing nations across Europe and South America and be a bit jealous. I alluded to this before, but by now you'd expect through sheer weight of variance alone that England may have fluked a couple of penalty shootouts and ridden their luck to a trophy. Looking across Europe, Italy, Spain, Germany, France and Portugal have all won major trophies in the last 10 or so years. No one can sit here and say that England should be winning every World Cup and every European Championship, but what about just winning once? Even Greece managed the Euros in 2004, and Denmark managed one at Euro 92. There is simply no other European country with similar population, football culture and expenditure to not win a trophy in 56 years like England have. Now that I've written it down and said it all out loud, it's all a bit maddening. England have seemingly found a way to lose in every conceivable way. England have lost with old squads. England have lost with young squads. England have lost with a team no one expected to win. England have lost with a golden generation. England have lost with English managers. England have lost with foreign managers. England have lost with managers that have won nothing at club level. And England have lost with managers that have won everything there is to win at club level. Just what on earth is even left in trying to break this cycle? As Southgate cradled Harry Kane, head in his hands, we're simply left with yet another image of English heartbreak to add onto the pile. Chris Waddle in Italia 90, Southgate himself in 96, Beckham's red in 98, Campbell's disallowed goal in 2004, the Ronaldo wink in 2006, Lampard's ghost goal in 2010, the Pirlo Panenka in 2012, Iceland embarrassment in 2016, penalties in 2020, and now Kane in 2022, and that isn't even a complete list. The years roll on and the heartbreak continues. When Euro 2024 in Germany kicks off on the 14th of June, it will be 58 years of English football without a single major trophy to show for it. At the time of writing, news is broken that Southgate will be staying on for that tournament, which is not entirely surprising given the public reaction and the levels of support and love from the group of players that he manages. It will be Southgate's last shot at getting it right. Southgate's last attempt at not only maintaining the philosophy that has seen this modern England win games where they are favourites, but to evolve and mould the team into one that can also win when they are not. It's the hope that kills you, but maybe not all hope is lost. The England team at World Cup 2022 was a young one with bags of potential. We can look at a nation like Spain, who at World Cup 2010 emerged victorious for their first World Cup as a nation ever. England have achieved a semi-final, a final and a quarter-final in the last 6 years. England are possibly closer than they've ever been before. On Sunday, the 14th of July at 9 p.m, the whistle will blow to signal the end of Euro 2024. 58 years on, the dream of thousands upon thousands flocking to Trafalgar Square to dance and to sing in the streets lives on, just like we did in 1966. I mean, I know that was then, but it could be again.